It is now official that KJ Martin is set to be a member of the Detroit Pistons as the Sixers have officially agreed to a trade. I'm going to break down exactly what this means for the Sixers team, and the unfortunate theme of this deadline does seem to be that the Sixers are turning into sellers. I'm going to break down the financial aspect, which unfortunately seems to be the priority for the Sixers organization, and what they are missing, why this is such a massive disappointment to me based on the context of what led up to the decision-making process with KJ Martin in particular. So to dive right into it, we knew going into last night's game that KJ Martin was pulled shortly before the matchup with the Mavericks with trade pending as the label. Did jump on and give a little bit of a reaction to that after the game, as well as what we saw with Joel Embiid returning to the floor there, but we did not know the destination of KJ Martin until this morning. It was reported that there were a couple of different offers that Daryl Morey was mulling, and I cannot believe that there was not a better offer on the table than this. So what we got is the Sixers are trading KJ Martin and 2 second-round picks to Detroit. So not bringing back draft picks, attaching them out with KJ Martin purely for the sake of salary cap. Now, to dive into the exact repercussions of that, I do want to start off with this write-up from Sixers Adam Arison here of the Philly Voice, who writes, as things stand now, the Sixers have $698,231 below the tax with 2 roster spots open, according to salary cap expert Yossi Goslin. Some further, by the way, trying to get Yossi Goslin on pretty soon, so trying to make that happen. But anyway, some further maneuvering could be required to fill out the roster to stay below the threshold, but between the trade and the swap of Caleb Martin and Quentin Grimes, the team made with the Dallas Mavericks on Tuesday afternoon, the vast majority of the work is done to avoid being taxpayers. This saved the Sixers much more money than what meets the eye. Trading Caleb Martin and Grimes trimmed the team's payroll by nearly $4 million, and not only are they shedding Martin's $7.975 million salary as well, but because they are ducking the luxury tax by doing so, they're avoiding making a tax payment to the non-taxpayer teams and setting themselves up to be one of the non-tax-paying teams on the receiving end of tax payments. It is a bizarre calculus to the untrained eye and still often difficult to gather for the trained eye too, but on Wednesday morning, Goslin calculated that the 2 trades could save the Sixers more than $40 million when considering the reduction in salary and the tax bill being replaced by a tax payment. Now, I do want to approach this from 2 angles. From the realistic standpoint, we've all seen how this season has kind of gone off the rails. And while obviously we want deep pockets in an owner, and obviously Josh Harris not hurting for money as he proved by, the ownership of the Devils and the Commanders and everything else that comes down to that, you also got to make sure you are saving those bullets for the right attempts. You know what I mean? That you cannot go all in every single year. And I think that's a little bit of the decision-making process. There are some basketball reasons that go along with this as far as what are the repercussions, the restrictions that you have, and the repeater tax as well, that these do compound. When you go in, when you are above the tax year after year, that the penalties get steeper. So it does kind of make sense to not start that clock if that is the outlook for this team. But to get a little bit more of a concrete feel for what exactly this brings to the table, shout out to Barnard of PHLY Sports here, who says, by dumping KJ Martin, the Sixers now $8.4 million under the luxury tax apron and $1.1 million under the salary cap with 13 players under contract. Despite being under the luxury tax apron, the Sixers do not open up a mid-level exception for the remainder of the season because they use the room MLE on Kelly Oubre Jr. this summer. It also doesn't impact Yabusele since KJ had a non-guaranteed deal. It does mean that they can sign buyout guys that make above the league average salary. So that is kind of the biggest angle from an actual X's and O's, or I guess advantage standpoint in bringing in talent. It seems that they're going to be banking pretty hard on the buyout market there. Now, that is absolutely a risk that the good players that have, nothing wrong with them or in a perfect spot simply do not reach the buyout market. And while the talent pool has gotten stronger in recent years, that we've seen some more notable names right here in Philadelphia, and while I understand he is not the guy that we all want to bend over backwards and are thrilled as playing in the role that he is, but Kyle Lowry was a pretty damn good buyout addition that this Sixers team did last year. That was a guy that started games in the playoffs for this team, and again, not the desired role that you obviously hope that is not the case there, but he is a guy who can compete and play winning basketball on a roster that is contending, so that's kind of the angle that they're going down. Now, I will have some more videos breaking down some potential names on this. I've seen some floated out there, but nobody official just yet. Lonzo Ball is personally one that I am excited by, enticed by, and do hope comes available, but that starts with the team being willing to part ways with him before he can even become fully available there. Now, to touch a little bit on the Sixers team overall, I just don't like this trade from the standpoint of maximizing assets. That has been a theme specifically from Daryl Morey that he's talked about, and it feels like this went exactly sideways. That when speaking about KJ Martin directly, I'm not going to say I believe he's the best basketball player in the world, but what I do know is he's a legitimate NBA caliber talent that they had to attach draft picks to get rid of. Averaging 6.4 points per game, 3.0 rebounds, still just 24 years old. And what impressed me the most about KJ this specific season, thought he figured out his role, what he can do at the NBA level, playing off Tyrese Maxey. There was a little bit of chemistry there. Obviously, the plus athleticism that he possesses, being a lob threat around the basket, and really being able to scale up as like a front court style player, despite being basically guard size there. I was really impressed with what he brought to this team, and I think having to attach assets to him to get rid of him is really poor choice there, to be perfectly honest. And I understand the financial flexibility that is brought on. And really the risk being taken here is that you can get a better caliber talent that will help this team in the short term through the buyout market based on what the flexibility that was brought on with KJ Martin. This word flexibility that's going to be floated out and really branded by this Sixers team, I can almost guarantee moving forward, really is not as true as it seems to be. Like for Gershon Yabusele, which I still believe a lot of this, the driving force and motivation from the Sixers perspective is to create room and make sure you can re-sign them, but it's not as linear as that. There's not just like you cut below this specific number and all of a sudden you open up this amount of money for Gershon Yabusele. It would be a lot easier to comprehend if it works like that, but it really isn't. It's about these MLEs, these trade exceptions, all these different factors that you're kind of adding to your ability to bring in players. So it's going to be continued moving parts. And as I mentioned, I am trying to get Yossi Goslin on to kind of chat up and give a little bit more of a concrete version of what this is or what we can expect moving forward, the impact of these decisions. But to give a peek into what he tweeted out here, that he said the Philadelphia 76ers saved $40 million by trading Caleb and KJ Martin. That's $14 million off payroll, $17 million off the tax, and about $12 to $14 million gain from the tax distribution. So what that means and how the tax is set up is that teams above that number have to pay to the NBA, and that gets redistributed to the teams that are below it. So the Sixers are now in that category. Not exactly where you want to be, and if you are, I mean, from the ownership standpoint, it is because you're bringing in more money, but from a fandom standpoint, this does not mean that they're going for it in the way that all expectations were this would be the year that would be the case. Now, with that being said, let's take all the finances out of this. I just think that this was a fundamentally wrong decision from the standpoint of KJ Martin was signed this summer with this balloon deal that we've talked all about, how he was the human trade exception, that he could be the route to getting the difference maker, the missing piece on the Sixers team. Well, we got absolutely nothing in return. In fact, had to pay off him. So that is a failure and one that Daryl Morey is going to have to wear there. And to Daryl directly, he better be ready to step up and face the media following this trade deadline because it is pretty clear that they're directly being sellers right now. Now, from the Sixers standpoint, this still means that there will be some roster movement. You take a peek at the depth chart right now, there are just 13 full-time NBA players on roster. You can look down the depth chart. As I mentioned, Joel Embiid returning last night. There was some positive news at the pregame press conference, recording this before the Heat game right now, that no signs of swelling or really pain being reported by Joel this morning. And that's the bigger story to me than how he looked on the floor. It's about how he bounces back and can he be ready to regularly play basketball more so than how he looked on the floor. And what I also think this directly means, I think it is a lock that Justin Edwards gets a standard NBA contract. And that is a huge positive storyline to me. Do want to dig deeper into that. And for Edwards specifically, I'm really impressed with the ability of him putting things together at such a rapid rate. This guy that I liked, obviously Emotep charter kid, went to Kentucky, a top-ranked recruit. There was a lot to like about his game, but I did not expect him to really put things together at the rate that is currently being. He is an NBA rotation player right now, and I expect the Sixers to use him as such moving forward. It's very clear that Nick Nurse believes in him and plans on that being the case. This is now 3 consecutive games, and I have not seen the starting lineup for tonight's matchup against the Heat just yet, but I would guess 4 consecutive games that Justin Edwards is in the starting lineup, unless, of course, Paul George is able to return to the floor tonight. But the point being there, they did strike gold through the undrafted market, but still frustrated by the overall process of how this trade deadline is going down. At this current point, the deadline is at 3 o'clock on Thursday, so still some time to make some more things happen if the Sixers team desires, but it is very abundantly clear at this point in time. They're operating with their pockets first instead of building a basketball team. So we'll see how things shake down, and hopefully at least one more move to break down on the channel here. But for now, those are my full thoughts on the KJ Martin saga. I guess it's been a long, drawn-out process when you think about everything that he's been through and really being much more of a financial pawn than a basketball player, which is kind of disappointing to me because I do like KJ as a player. But think about it, he was a part of this James Harden trade initially, signed to this contract with the expectation of him being traded and then basically being given away, having to pay to get off him to that extent. So very disappointed that is the route, and I guess the legacy of KJ Martin in Philadelphia. We'll be wishing him the best out there in Detroit, who I do think maximized their assets quite well, adding 2 picks just to take on that salary for a guy that can actually play. This is not some contract that, you're going to be dreading down the line. He's non-guaranteed next year. And if it doesn't work out in Detroit, you simply can just chop them. So that's the reality of what just went down for the Sixers team. I don't love it. In fact, I lean pretty close to the direct opposite side of that equation there, but I'm hoping there is at least one more deal that can have me wrap my brain around what the goals are or what the future plans are for the Sixers team. So drop your thoughts below. Do want to hear any buyout names that you guys might be interested in or names that you're eyeing there, your thoughts on the trade overall, and anything else you got on your mind. As always, appreciate each and one of you guys tuning in this video here. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.